As I hold this leaf, I do solemnly swear that I've been feeling a little bit uninspired to post on Instagram recently, and obviously there are much larger issues in the world right now, but I just figured I would share that because it elucidates a paradox, and the paradox is that sometimes I get caught in the trap of thinking that the most important thing for me to share is the fanciest thing that I can do because it might get the most oohs and ahs. Love me, love me, love me. And ironically, the way that I'm most serviceable as a teacher is through my ability to integrate modalities to help people. A lot of what practice is not the ooh and ah. And I got nothing wrong with the ooh and ah. Like, I really respect practitioners that put the time in and can do awesome stuff. So I thought I would share something that I'm working on today, which is internal rotation of the hip, because I have a history of back injuries. You know, in my early 20s, I had 2 herniated discs in my lower back. And as I get older, I'm now 40, there's a lot of maintenance that has to go on to be able to continue to play in the world. And so one of the things that I've been doing to work on this internal rotation is an exercise that I learned from a good friend of mine, Luke, at Motive in New York, where I no longer am. And you guys have probably seen that this movement, this 90-90 transitional movement, has become like really popular in movement circles, especially where people, you know, are desiring to integrate the idea of active mobility. And so what happens is people see the movement, and this actually is exactly what happened to me early on. And I was like, oh, look, I'm doing it. I'm rotating my hips and I can do it. And I was like, there's no more work. And then I worked with some really insightful professionals who distinguished for me the difference between movement and mobility. And both are important. You gotta, you know, be able to move and coordinate and get up and down off the floor. But mobility is really about isolating the rotation of an individual joint so that you can optimize its functionality so that you can do movement better. So doing this is not necessarily addressing a lack of internal rotation in the hip, because doing this, as you can see, like my pelvis gets to shift and turn, right? Whereas if I'm focused on internal rotation, my pelvis isn't allowed to move. My thigh has to turn inside my hip. So what I've been doing to work on this in an active way is I've added a piece with this wall, because I think that in mobility work, it's really useful to have a neurological blocking system that inhibits movement until your body understands how to move the piece that you're trying to move. So what I do is I start in this sort of small straddle. It's about a 90-degree angle, and then bend my knees and lift my butt, and I stick it out. And when I stick it out, my sitting bones start to move back, and then I can lean against the wall. And now I'm gonna try to press my low back into the wall from my abdominals, not from tucking my tailbone. Because I have my 2 hips on the wall, I've now got a really clear metric of whether I'm working in the hip or whether I'm simply turning my pelvis. And so I use one hand to stabilize, and this is the hip, ironically, that doesn't internally rotate as well as the other one. And why that's ironic is that this is the leg that I always use to demo yoga stuff, like putting my leg behind my head or doing the splits. So range of motion and total workspace doesn't necessarily parallel functionality of the joint. I think that's something really important to understand for longevity. So take a hand, put it on the outside of your knee, and also posture up by placing your head against the wall. And this hand, the back hand, keep that shoulder packed back and press your knee with your hand so that your thigh starts to turn inwards, and you'll know because your knee will turn. And you'll start to feel it in the hip, and it'll feel like a different stretch than external rotation. So when you do something like pigeon, you get that nice muscular stretch on the outside of the hip. This is a capsular stretch, so it feels a little different. It feels a little kind of creepier. Push your knee into your hand once you reach the end range of motion, and you'll do that for 10 seconds. And then after 10, inhale down into your belly, so make intra-abdominal pressure, and push your low back against the wall, and then try to pull your knee off of your hand, moving into more internal rotation in that hip. And you're gonna feel it in the hip, in the groin. You might feel it a little bit in the knee. As long as you keep your foot flexed and you don't overdo it, it should be okay. After 10 seconds, again, push the knee into the hand. So this is called a progressive angle isometric, because I'm trying to open this angle, but I've got this overcoming isometric action with my hand holding equal and opposite pressure against my knee. And then inhale and pull your knee off of your hand. I like to use this fist to make more strength. I'm reaching my knee in and down, really starting to feel it in the inner hip. So you can continue that same action for 2 minutes, 10 seconds push, 10 seconds pull away. How does this apply to yoga? It applies to yoga in 1,000 ways. Every time your leg is behind you in a warrior or a lunge, there's a certain amount of internal rotation that's necessary to make enough space in the hip for things to operate well. If you struggle with a pose like Warrior One, which like who doesn't, right? Stability in a lunge, and just general space for your lower back to feel good and operate. So let me know if you like this kind of stuff, because I could do more of it. I enjoy doing it. For some reason, I kind of hold back on doing it, but let me hear from you guys. Hit me up with questions. And as always, if you want to check out the source of this particular exercise, that's my bro Luke at Motive. You know, I really believe that to have a complete practice, you got to learn stuff from all different pieces. And then it's not about just having information, it's about how you put it together and apply it and reconcile it with the modality that's your primary focus. All right, internal rotation it is for the day. You guys have a great day.